Hello and welcome to Our Time. Question for you, why is history so important? Well, to answer that question, my very special guest in this episode of Our Time is the CEO of the History Trust of South Australia, Greg Mackey, and this is the third or fourth time I think we've talked.
Could be fourth or fifth time
about
over the
so
years.
many different things that
Indeed.
are all related to really the history of
South Australia.
Yes, exactly. But before we talk about that, can we quickly just remind people of your history?
Well, I've been around for a while.
Haven't we all?
I started my working life at Myer. I was an executive cadet and worked in the furniture department.
Oh, right.
And then I went off backpacking for a year and I came back and I managed a news agency for a while and then finished my degree. And
what was your degree?
History. Just an arts degree, a Bachelor of Arts majoring in history.
Right.
And I was incredibly fortunate. My father and stepmother had in 1984, along with a friend of theirs, Patricia, opened a bookshop. And I helped them unpack the boxes, and because I was back at university, this is 84, I needed a job. They gave me a job, and within 6 months they brought me in as a partner in the business. 21 years later, I
that's
left.
Cheap labour, by the way.
That's right.
Come back in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
21 years later, but during those 21 years, I served a term as an elected member of the Adelaide City Council. I ran for Lord Mayor unsuccessfully. I went on and scored the job of running Arts SA for Mike Rann when he was Premier and Minister for the Arts.
That's how we met originally.
And indeed, that's correct. And then I went on to be Deputy Chief Executive, so up the slippery pole I went and then back down the slippery pole. I did a few years of private consultancy and then I was missing being in an organisation. I was missing actually making things happen. So I applied for and won the job as Chief Executive of the History Trust, and that was 9.5 years ago, and now I'm almost at the point of my retirement.
Oh, don't tell us that. Don't tell us that yet.
Okay.
Save that for the end.
Okay. Wipe that.
But Greg, to answer the question, why is history so important to us all?
I think if we don't know where we've come from, we will not know where we want to go.
Pretty simple, really, isn't it?
It's very, very simple.
Yeah.
If you think about your family, it's good to know from where you've come. It's good to know if you're having children that they understand the past and how that has affected the present and how that's affected people. It's no different in the history of societies, the military history, the technology,
yes,
etc. We become richer human beings and we become a more sustainable and successful society when we have regard to the past and the lessons that we have learned.
We've been very lucky on this program to talk to quite a lot of people from different walks of life who are involved in preserving history. For example, the boat or the ship that came back to Adelaide from...
The Clipper ship,
the
City
Clipper
of Adelaide.
Ship, yep, which is now forging ahead.
It is.
But simple things like that, we sometimes forget where we really did come from. And I guess with First Nation people talking about their history and how our history collided with their history, we sort of really do need to get our head around where we genuinely did come from to be able to solve a lot of the issues that are around today.
That's exactly right, Malcolm. One of the museums that I have the privilege of running, is the Migration Museum in the city. And that, along with the South Australian Maritime Museum, because remembering up until the beginning of the 20th century, it was largely through boats that people came to this country. And from there, of course, aviation and the Smith brothers, who were the first people to fly across the world.
Which is now in the
Adelaide Airport. Yeah, a wonderful, wonderful thing. We have important stories to tell. We have important stories to tell ourselves, and we have important stories to share with the rest of the world. The National Motor Museum is another one of our museums up at Birdwood. It is amazing, and we are, and I know we will get to talk about Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert, the bus, a little bit later. It is a museum of social history. It's also a museum of technology and a museum of design, because without technology and without design, you don't have a motor vehicle.
No, you know, one of the things that fascinated me while I was there, because I made a doco up there quite a long time ago, and what was interesting was the original electric cars, of which there is one up there. And, you know, we think that's a brand new invention, but in fact it's back in the 1920s.
And it was, in fact, the fossil fuel industry, as we call it now, but it was basically oil and petroleum, and they took control. They took over. Yeah, and so electricity.
It's why, you know, with all the recent election stuff, with everybody arguing to each other, it's very hard for the general public to really work out where we should go, how we should go, should we have this, should we have that. But when you look back in history, a lot of the answers are already there. I often wonder why politicians aren't looking backwards a bit more.
We would be a more successful and more prosperous society if our political leaders had a larger regard for the history and the lessons of history.
They need to consult people like you more often.
Well, you know,
more often.
I might have a little bit more time.
Oh, well, yes, maybe. But what we're here really talking about was several things, but this is one of them, the History Festival. What's great about this is these magazines, which have all got the same information inside, have also got different covers. Why have they got different covers, he asked.
Well...
Oh, and you've got one there. Oh, that's yours that we're showing now.
We have different covers.
Yeah. Do you want to hold that one up too? There you go.
And there's a fifth one that is not here.
Right.
But we may be able to bring the image into
Very nice. And here's the other two.
Yeah. So the theme of this year's History Festival is decisions. Decisions are what history is built on. Decisions are what families navigate in their lives every day.
Well, absolutely, of course. Well, there are three main things that we're going to talk about, and they're inside this, so I'll just hold this up. At the top here, just explain, this is Ayers House, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is at Ayers House, which is one of the most famous and stately homes of Adelaide. It is the home to the National Trust of South Australia. It's also a very, very successful events and function centre, and it has venues that we will be bringing to life during the month of May on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursday evenings with a whole series of 26 talks, lectures, talks, and a whole range of different subjects. Yours truly will also be making a cameo appearance and talking about my history. Right.
Well, it is incredibly important. This is a beautiful old building, and being right in the heart of Adelaide, there's not really much left of this sort of structure, I guess, in the actual city.
Not of the scale of Ayers House.
Yes,
it was Don Dunstan who saved Ayers House. It had been since the Second World War a nurses'
it used to be opposite the hospital.
Opposite the hospital, the old hospital, and it was the residence for the nurses who worked at the hospital. And what, of course, eventually happened was the house fell into disrepair. Don Dunstan and his government in the 1970s spent money to restore it to its original grandeur, and it became home to the National Trust, and it also became a very, very famous restaurant and a series of function centres, and we're bringing that back to life.
Oh, that's brilliant. See, if you're watching the program in Melbourne, you're very aware of that Melbourne's trying to save so many of the city buildings because they're all being lost with high-rise. It's just grateful we've got a couple here in Adelaide that we've still got. when we talk about the talks, are they very formal? Do you have to book them? How do you?
You certainly need to book them. They're free, but you need to go online to the History Festival program and choose keyword the House of History, and what that will then bring up is all of the talks, and choose your own adventure and decide which ones you'd like to get along to. They're in the evening. The bar opens at about 5:30. People can have a drink, a bit of cheese, then go in and take their drink into the ballroom and sit and listen to a fascinating talk, and then repair to the bar afterwards for some more conversation.
Yes. Just looking at this second picture here, I'll hold it up to make it easy for camera 3. Thank you very much. This is Don Dunstan, and we're going to come back in a tick, and we'll be talking about Don and the amount of changes he brought into the City of Adelaide and, in fact, the state. Back in a tick. And welcome back to Our Time. We're talking about the History Festival, which is happening in South Australia next week. I think it starts, Greg?
Starts later this week.
This week, okay. But just curious about the photo here on the front of this book. And we were just talking before about this person here, who is...
probably Borough's most famous drag queen.
Who knew?
Kim Apostolides, whose family run the Mount Brian pub. Kim has a drag alter ego by the name of Kim Burley, Berlei, as in the bra.
Okay.
She's a fantastic sort, and the Borough Town Hall celebrates a significant anniversary this year, and so it was too good an opportunity to pass.
Don't we have a diverse history?
We do. We absolutely do, and we should celebrate it more. And the History Festival is all about celebrating our diversity and the significant and colourful people who have made their way through our stories.
Of course, our story really began because we were supposed to be the English utopia.
That is
here
correct.
in Adelaide. I just love at the top here, we probably can't quite get a really tight close-up of this, but I love the way facial hair has changed. When you look, apart from the lady at the end, she doesn't have any at all, but, you know, from these big bushy beards. We were just talking in the break about working with the Adelaide City Council. For those who have been into the town hall, I'm sure this is the same in Melbourne as well. When you look at the faces of the councillors and mayors that we've had in the City of Adelaide in the past, the fashions of facial hair has been from enormous to very refined little moustaches.
Absolutely, and of course before the electric razor, it was much, much more difficult to maintain your coif of facial hair, and so the more fashionable, the bigger the beard.
The birds could land in
better.
it,
That's
or,
right.
or make a nest
Yeah,
out
make
of
a
it.
nest.
I shouldn't have pulled my finger out of that place I had in this booklet, because we're going to talk about Don Dunstan, and he was the Premier of South Australia, and the influence he had on the state, the city, the arts. He was really a man of the people in more ways than one. For Norwood, wasn't he? He was
the member for Norwood. He first served as Premier in the late 60s, and then the government changed hands, and then in the early 70s, Don Dunstan led a government and served for the best part of the 70s until he retired in about 1979.
And he sadly passed away, and again we were saying I saw him not long before he did, and he still had this amazing command. He was the man to follow.
He was a trendsetter.
Yep.
Many people will remember him probably most famously or infamously for the day he wore pink shorts and white walk socks to Parliament.
Yes.
It's an image that is very difficult to get out of your memory once you've seen it. But that was Don making an important statement about our climate and the way we were expected to dress, and to a very large extent still do dress with too many clothes for our climate.
Oh, let's take them all off
That's
now.
right.
Let's just. Was he the man who built the festival centre or instigated that, and it was followed through by the next government? Was that what happened?
No, it was actually instigated by Steele Hall, the former LCL Premier, and it was delivered by Don Dunstan's government.
And he really, or they combined, they really started the Adelaide Festival of Arts.
That started in 1960, so that was some years earlier, during the end of the Playford era.
Oh, was it that? Okay, yeah. Well, there was definitely pressure to start, and it became a bit highbrow to start with, and then the Fringe developed.
Exactly.
The Adelaide Fringe.
Yeah, so the Adelaide Festival was still a fully curated, wonderful festival bringing the very best from around the world. The Adelaide Fringe is like the enfant terrible, the precocious child with an open platform, and anyone can have a go, which is in fact exactly like our History Festival. Anyone can have a go.
So when you say anyone can have a go, in what capacity? You can put on a function?
You can put on a function, you can put on a show, provided, and it's exactly the same with the Adelaide Fringe, provided you're not racist, sexist, homophobic, you can take your risk and you can put on a show. So in this year's History Festival, we have about 350 organisations or individuals presenting about 600 shows, whether they're talks, whether they're walks, whether they're workshops across the state for the entire month of May. And one of the most exciting things that we're bringing for the first time to South Australia's History Festival is a theatrical production called An Audience with Don Dunstan. And it's set in the mid-90s in a late night in a bar where everyone's gone home, and there's Don Dunstan sat there in his pink shorts sipping a glass of Chardonnay, and the attendant to the bar is closing up and tidying up, and there's a bit of song and there's a bit of poetry and a bit of reminiscence, and it's a wonderful show. I went over and saw the opening night in Melbourne, and so people can see An Audience with Don Dunstan from the 8th of May to the 16th of May at Ayres House in the Conservatory, which is a wonderful part of their complex there, and it is going to be something that will be talked about for a very long time.
Perhaps they'll write a musical next about it. They did for Hamilton.
They did for Hamilton.
Don Dunstan was definitely a mover and a shaker.
They did for
and Keating, yes.
But they do it for very few politicians.
Yes, I guess that's a call out to a writer to instigate something like that. I think, having been a performer all my life, the years that Don was in power here, our industry grew enormously, and the support that he gave to the arts through government and just actually turning up himself that made people come along to see him.
Don was a very urbane man of culture. He performed in several Adelaide festivals.
Yes.
He did a show with Keith Michelle, the great South Australian actor.
At my theatre, in fact. They actually was the beginning of the State Theatre Company, which he more or less instigated down at, it was called Theatre 62.
Theatre 62, indeed.
See, those history things are even, the things that are in our lifetime that we remember.
Are history.
Yes, they're history.
They absolutely are
Sometimes
history.
we just don't acknowledge the fact that we've lived through history.
Every day will tomorrow be history.
Yes, that's why I don't like going to sleep at night, because I wake up the next day a day older. Somebody quoted, I think, such a lovely quote.
One of the things that Don very famously did was back through his government, the development of the film industry. The South Australian Film Corporation was established, and it rode the wave. In fact, it drove the wave of great Australian filmmaking in the 1970s, which then led, years later, in the 1990s, to a flourishment of films, including The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Which we'll talk about now, because that's the last one on this particular page of the book, of which there is, as Greg said, so much to go here, see. The bus was found, we talked about this last time you were on the show. Where was the bus found?
The bus was found in northern New South Wales in a paddock. It had survived 2 bushfires. A helicopter had dropped a massive amount of water onto the bus, the original Priscilla, Queen of the Desert bus. No, they actually thought it was a bus full of school children, so they water bombed it to save the children. In fact, of course, it was not. It was this famous prop from this incredibly famous, now international iconic movie from 1994. So 31 years ago, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, took the world by storm.
Yes.
Indeed, 31 years ago. And we found the bus, we have acquired the bus, and as was mentioned earlier, the National Motor Museum is one of our museums, and we're raising money to restore the bus and then bring it into permanent display at the National Motor Museum up at Birdwood.
That's brilliant.
And we're raising money. And so during the History Festival, once again at Ayers House, because we're really enlivening Ayers House, we are having an event called Priscilla Frock Up and Find Out. And it's a little bit of fun. Is
Vonnie involved in that?
History, yeah, indeed, Vonnie is involved. Vonnie is one of our Priscilla Glam ambassadors.
Okay.
And
who's actually played in that show?
She has indeed.
Brisbane.
That's correct. It's going to be a night of great fun. There will be auctions, there will be opportunities for people to contribute toward the fundraising effort, and it will be a really, really fun way to spend Friday, the evening of Friday, the 23rd of May. Oh,
you've got to keep so much in your head, Greg. Now, I'm coming back in just a tick, and we have a very important question to ask Greg. We'll see you in a tick. These are the books you should be looking out for if you live in South Australia, and if you don't, why don't you come over and catch the South Australian History Festival, which Greg, the CEO of the History Trust, has been chatting to us in the last half hour. Greg, thank you so much. You've got some bad news for us, though.
Oh, it's not bad news for me.
Yes, quite.
After 45 years of working hard, I'm going to be stepping away from my role as Chief Executive of the History Trust from the 1st of July. For the brand new financial year. So I will see the History Festival all the way through, and then have a couple of weeks to train up the new person and pack my books and ship out.
And ship out, I like that. Greg, it's been lovely over the past few years having a chat with you about all these different things, because you've genuinely been a mover and a shaker here in South Australia in so many different capacities.
Thank you.
And it's wonderful that the History Festival, it's on right now, by the way, it's on right now from a few days ago, the beginning of May, right through to the end of May. If you're in Victoria, come over, see us. If you're here in South Australia, take advantage of this great festival. We are really the state of festivals, aren't we?
We are the festival state. Adelaide is a festival city.
Yes. Forget the city of churches, we're the festival city. The other thing is, our history is not that well known amongst a lot of people who either have come here, immigrated to South Australia, and or have just grown up here and not found out where we all came from. And it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. One of the really important things that the History Trust does, Malcolm, and listeners, viewers, is we invest in the development of online learning resources about South Australia's history so that teachers and students right the way across the state have a chance to learn about our past.
Very, very valuable. And a great way, you're going to write a book about your life, as I've done. And the thing is, I'll joke about this, but when we get older and our memory just fades somewhat, to have something to refer back to is so valuable. And to know where we came from, we also can learn where we're going to. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Our Time. Greg, thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
So until next time on Our Time, we look forward to seeing you there. Keep yourself nice to live.